When the bank manager looked up at the sharply dressed black woman standing at the counter, he smirked. "You people always think you can just walk in and take whatever you want," he said coldly, sliding her ID back across the desk. She blinked, confused at his words. "I just need to withdraw money from my account," she replied calmly. But it was already too late. The manager had made up his mind, and in exactly 7 minutes, he would regret every single word. Kendra Lowell had never liked drawing attention to herself. She was direct, decisive, and preferred to let her results speak for her. At 36, she was already a name in finance. Quietly known, carefully respected. She had spent the last 6 years building a nationwide network of inclusive financial institutions designed to serve communities often ignored by traditional banks. But the one she walked into this morning, ironically bearing her own signature on the ownership papers, had apparently forgotten who she was. She had flown in under the radar, unannounced, hoping to personally assess some complaints she'd received from lower-level employees about how the branch was being managed. Kendra liked to see things for herself. No suits, no press, no big entrances. Just her and a notebook tucked into her leather tote. When she approached the teller with her ID and account information, the interaction was cold but routine, until the teller excused herself and returned with the branch manager, a man named Blake Torrance. She recognized the name from the reports. Arrogant, dismissive, biased. She was hoping the reports were exaggerated. They weren't. He didn't even try to hide his disdain. As soon as he laid eyes on her, he gave a tight-lipped smile that never reached his eyes. "I'm sorry," he said, leaning over the counter. "But this kind of withdrawal requires higher authorization. We'll need to verify your identity more thoroughly. You understand? We have procedures." She glanced down at the paperwork she'd filled out, perfectly completed. "My ID is right there. I'm listed as the executive account holder. This withdrawal is well within daily limits." He didn't budge. "Still, we need to verify. For security. You know how it is these days." Kendra's jaw clenched, but she didn't flinch. "Fine," she said coolly. "Verify it." But instead of making a call or pulling up the verification system, Blake simply stepped away, went into the back office, and left her standing there for 12 minutes. When he returned, he had 2 security guards behind him. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave," he said, his tone patronizing now. "You're making my staff uncomfortable." "Excuse me?" she said, stunned. "We've seen cases like this before," he said with a shrug. "People trying to scam their way into someone else's account. You don't look like someone who holds that kind of money." Those words. You don't look like someone who holds that kind of money. For a second, Kendra didn't respond. She felt the eyes of every customer and employee in the lobby shifting to her. Some looked embarrassed, others curious. A few seemed to find it amusing. She took a breath, slow and steady. "Blake, right?" He blinked, caught off guard. "Yes?" She gave a tight smile. "Wait here." Without another word, she stepped away, pulled out her phone and dialed a number. It took less than 30 seconds. Then she returned to the counter and simply said, "You have about 5 minutes left." Blake looked confused. 5 minutes for what? But Kendra didn't answer. She stood calmly, arms folded, watching the clock. What he didn't know was that her call had gone directly to the regional executive vice president, who happened to owe Kendra several favors and knew exactly who she was. Within moments, the chain reaction had begun. Compliance, legal, HR, all of them notified. And as per Kendra's authority, she had requested a full audit of the branch, along with immediate administrative intervention. But Blake continued playing the fool. "What, you calling your boyfriend or something?" He laughed nervously. "Trying to get him to wire you some cash? Lady, just leave before this gets worse." She raised an eyebrow. "Oh, it's going to get much worse. Just not for me." 2 minutes later, the front doors of the bank opened sharply. 3 people walked in, regional officers in sharp suits and determined expressions. Blake's laughter stopped. "Mr. Torrance?" the woman in the front asked. He nodded slowly, trying to look composed. "Yes. Can I help you?" She handed him a sealed folder. "We're placing you on immediate administrative leave pending a full investigation into racial profiling, misconduct, and discrimination." Blake's face turned from pale to crimson. "What? Wait, who even—" He turned back to look at Kendra. She was no longer waiting at the counter. She had stepped into the executive office behind the front desk, the door held open for her by one of the officers. Inside, she sat calmly, already reviewing a thick stack of printed reports she had requested. The employees at the front of the branch exchanged whispers that quickly turned to awe. Someone finally asked the question out loud. "Wait, who is she?" Blake already knew. He stared at the closed office door in disbelief, then looked down at the folder still trembling in his hands. His name was bolded under the subject line. "Internal Personnel Review, initiated by K. Lowell." In the last few minutes of his authority, Blake tried to salvage what little dignity he had left. He turned toward the remaining staff and began barking orders. "Back to work, people! This doesn't mean anything yet!" But it was too late. No one was listening anymore. The power had shifted, and outside the glass windows, a sleek black car had pulled up to the curb. Inside sat a man holding a leather-bound portfolio. His name was Trent Holloway, Kendra's longtime legal advisor. He stepped out of the vehicle slowly, buttoning his jacket, scanning the front of the building with the calm, cold focus of a man who had handled lawsuits before and never lost one. Blake Torrance had just made the worst mistake of his professional life, and he had done it in front of the very woman who could dismantle his entire career. But the story wasn't over, because when Kendra finally stepped back out of the office, she wasn't alone, and the documents she held in her hand would not only expose what had happened at this branch, but reveal a history of far deeper problems that had been hiding in plain sight all along. When Kendra stepped out of the office, holding a thick folder in one hand and her phone in the other, the entire atmosphere of the bank had shifted. Every employee sensed it. Every customer felt it. The branch, once so loud with assumption and arrogance, had gone still. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Authority followed her like a shadow. Behind her trailed 2 regional compliance officers and a legal assistant, all of them quiet, professional, and carrying clipboards already scribbled with notes. Kendra stopped just a few feet from Blake, who stood near the teller desk with a stunned, shrinking expression. "Blake," she said without emotion, "this is your last opportunity to speak with some level of honesty. Before we proceed with formal termination and legal review, I'd like to hear your version. Why did you deny me access to my own funds?" His mouth opened, then closed. For a moment, he looked like he might try to defend himself. But no one came to his rescue. Even the guards had stepped back. I didn't know who you were," he said finally. "You came in without any announcement, no appointment, the ID, the request. It just didn't seem normal. I thought it might be a scam. I was trying to protect the branch." She tilted her head. "You thought it might be a scam?" "Yes," he said, holding her gaze with a trace of defiance. "We've had people come in pretending to be account holders. It's protocol to investigate when something seems off. Interesting, she replied. And what exactly about me seemed off? He hesitated again. Too long. I don't know. It was just instinct. Kendra smiled, an unreadable smile. So it had nothing to do with the fact that I'm black? Nothing to do with the tone you used when you said, "You people always think you can just walk in and take whatever you want"? His eyes widened. I didn't say it like that. I was standing right here. One of the tellers, a young woman named Fallon, spoke up suddenly. That's exactly how he said it. I heard it clear as day, and it wasn't the first time. Blake whipped around. Fallon, don't... But she wasn't backing down. You've said things like that to other customers too. I never had the courage to report it, but it's true, and people have quit over it. It's why I sent those emails to HR last month. Kendra turned to her. You sent the complaints? Fallon nodded, her voice shaking. I didn't know it would actually get to anyone. You did the right thing, Kendra said gently. And it did. Blake took a step forward, voice rising. This is a setup. You're blowing this way out of proportion. I have managed this branch successfully for 5 years. 5 years of intimidation, condescension, and underperformance. Kendra interrupted. I've read your reports, Blake. You've barely hit targets. Employee turnover is nearly double the national average. And worst of all, you've cultivated a culture of discrimination and fear. This is not a misunderstanding. This is who you are. At that, the legal assistant stepped forward and handed him another sealed envelope. You are officially terminated from this institution, effective immediately, Kendra continued. A full audit of your practices, interactions, and employee files will be conducted, and all evidence will be submitted to legal. If we find that you've acted unethically toward other customers, particularly those from marginalized communities, we will pursue legal action. You can't do this, Blake muttered, though the fight had left his voice. You can't just walk in and take everything from me. I'm not taking anything, Kendra said. You gave it up the moment you decided you were above accountability. He stood there, stunned, as she turned her attention away from him entirely. Trent Holloway, her legal advisor, handed her a laptop and a private account of findings that had just been delivered from their internal audit team. The story went deeper than expected. It wasn't just Blake. 2 assistant managers, both white, had been promoted within months of being hired, while 4 more qualified Black and Latino employees had been quietly passed over and eventually left the branch. Clients with foreign-sounding last names were routinely offered lower credit limits or denied loans outright. Complaints had been filed and quietly buried. Bonuses were handed out based on who showed loyalty to Blake, not performance. This wasn't a branch with one bad apple. This was an ecosystem designed to protect a rotten core. Fallon, Kendra said, would you step into the office with me? I'd like you to help walk us through what's been happening here. The young woman looked stunned. Me? You were brave enough to speak up. I want to hear the rest. Kendra and Fallon disappeared into the office with the legal team. Blake was escorted out of the building without another word. As the doors closed behind him, customers began to murmur. A few applauded softly, some pulled out their phones. And just like that, the power dynamic flipped. Over the next 3 hours, Kendra held private interviews with every employee in the branch. What she heard shocked her, but it also confirmed what she'd suspected for months. This branch was not an outlier. It was a symptom. And if one of her institutions could be infected with this kind of quiet corruption, others might be too. Fallon, now growing more confident, shared everything: documents, emails, timestamps. Kendra watched her carefully, taking notes, asking questions, confirming details. Fallon had clearly been documenting things for a while, hoping someone would listen. Kendra did more than listen. She asked Fallon to stay on as a senior advisor during the restructuring of the branch. "You want me to stay?" Fallon said, wide-eyed. "You're exactly the kind of person this place needs," Kendra said, honest, courageous, and with a clear understanding of what went wrong. But just as things began to settle, a new issue emerged. Kendra received a call from one of her regional directors. Another complaint, this time from a client who had been turned away from this same branch just days earlier. A woman named Giselle Thomas. Black. 62 years old. Retired teacher. She had tried to cash a $9,000 check, her pension lump sum. The manager had claimed it was suspicious and refused to deposit it unless she provided a list of unnecessary additional documents. Giselle had left in tears. Kendra stared at the phone for a long moment. Then she asked, "Was it Blake?" The director hesitated. Number it was someone else, one of the assistant managers. Derek Milton. Kendra's expression darkened. "Have him report here. Now." What had begun as a simple visit had become a full-scale reckoning. Kendra wasn't just cleaning house anymore. She was tearing it down and rebuilding it from the ground up. And when Derek arrived, smug, polished, unaware, he would be walking into a meeting that would change the course of his career forever. Derek Milton walked into the branch with the air of someone who thought he owned the place. His suit was crisp, tie perfectly knotted, confidence practically dripping off him as he nodded at a few familiar faces on his way toward the executive office. He hadn't even noticed that Blake was gone. He had no idea who was waiting for him. "Derek Milton?" Kendra asked, stepping forward before he could reach the office. He blinked, slightly confused to see someone he didn't recognize standing between him and the door. "Yes. And you are?" She held out a hand. "Kendra Lowell." He gave a brief, disinterested shake before it clicked. His entire posture shifted, the name finally registering. "Wait, are you the Kendra Lowell?" "I am." He laughed nervously, eyes darting around. "Wow. I wasn't expecting this. Is this about Blake?" "It's about Blake, and it's about you." He hesitated. "Me?" Kendra held up a tablet. "Your name came up in multiple employee complaints, some of which predate Blake's tenure. Your file shows a pattern of behavior that's not only unethical but dangerous. And 2 days ago, you turned away a retired teacher trying to deposit her pension. Care to explain that?" Derek cleared his throat. "Oh, that. Yeah, I remember her. She had a large check with no prior deposits of that size. I was being cautious. You asked for utility bills, a marriage certificate, a list of her previous employers. None of that is policy." "I was just being thorough," he said, tone sharper now. "And honestly, some people don't understand how banking works. She got emotional. That's not on me." Kendra's gaze didn't waver. "She was trying to deposit a check from the Department of Education. You humiliated her." Derek shifted on his feet. "Look, I've been working here for years. I know how to spot red flags. Sometimes you have to make judgment calls." "Judgment," Kendra repeated, her voice flat. "Like the judgment call you made 2 months ago when you refused to approve a loan for a young black couple with a 780 credit score, claiming their financial profile wasn't convincing enough." "That's not... Okay, wait. Now this is turning into something it's not. It's turning into exactly what it is." Her voice was calm but final. The compliance officers behind her stepped forward with another sealed packet. You're suspended pending further investigation. Do not return to this branch or any affiliated branch until this review is complete. You will be contacted by our internal audit division within the next 72 hours. Derek opened the envelope and flipped through the documents. His lips tightened. This is insane. You're tearing this place apart. I'm rebuilding it, she said. We serve people here. We don't profile them. We don't punish them for not looking the way you expect wealth to look. As Derek was escorted out, Kendra turned back to the employees who remained, many of whom had been silent for far too long. Let me be clear, she said. This branch will not close, but it will change. Every single file, every complaint, every customer history will be reviewed. We will contact former clients and employees, and they'll be invited to speak openly about their experiences. There will be no retaliation. Anyone who wishes to stay will be given the opportunity to retrain under new leadership. Those who don't align with this mission are welcome to resign, no questions asked. There was a long silence. Then Fallon stepped forward. I want to stay, she said, voice steady. I want to help fix what's been broken. One by one, other employees began nodding. A young teller, an older loan advisor, even the receptionist, who had worked quietly under Blake for 5 years, raised her hand. Kendra gave a slight nod. Then let's get to work. But her phone buzzed just as she turned back to the office. It was a call from one of the VPs. Go ahead, she answered. Ms. Lowell, the voice said, I just wanted to let you know. Your visit has caused a bit of a ripple effect. We've received more than a dozen emails in the last hour from clients across the state. They're sharing stories. They saw clips online. Apparently someone filmed part of the confrontation at the branch. It's going viral. Kendra glanced at the customers still in the lobby. One of them, the man who had applauded when Blake was escorted out, gave her a thumbs up. She smiled slightly. Then maybe this story needed to be told. By the end of the day, the bank's official page was flooded with messages of support. Clients were thanking the company for holding its leadership accountable. Former employees came forward, validating the changes. And in a surprising move, a major financial magazine picked up the story. Bank CEO confronts discrimination at her own branch. Fires manager in real time. The headline sparked a national conversation. Back at the office, Kendra watched the reactions quietly. She wasn't in this for recognition. She didn't care about the headlines or the praise. What mattered was that every customer, regardless of what they looked like, could walk into a branch and be treated with respect. A few days later, she met privately with Giselle Thomas, the retired teacher who had been turned away. Kendra handed her a letter of apology, along with a new premium account, with full benefits, no fees, and a personal advisor. Giselle wiped away a tear. No one ever stood up for me like this. You deserved better, Kendra replied simply. The change didn't stop there. A new director of equity and inclusion was appointed across all branches. Ongoing anti-bias training became mandatory. Employee review processes were updated, and anonymous reporting channels were strengthened. 6 months later, the same branch that had once denied Kendra a withdrawal was awarded for having the highest client satisfaction ratings in the region. Fallon, now the assistant branch manager, ran it with confidence and fairness. She often reminded her team of the day everything changed, not to relive the past, but to never forget how easily power can be abused when no one's watching. As for Blake and Derek, they both attempted lawsuits. Neither made it past the first hearing. The paper trail of misconduct was overwhelming, and Kendra? She kept moving forward, quietly, relentlessly, still preferring her work to speak louder than her name. But that day, those 7 minutes in that lobby, became a symbol. A reminder that real change doesn't start with a press release or a photo op. It starts when someone refuses to be disrespected, stays calm in the face of ignorance, and holds the powerful accountable in their own house. Because Kendra didn't just walk into a bank to make a withdrawal. She walked in to withdraw every ounce of silence that had let injustice live too long behind a desk. And she didn't leave until it was done.